When I was 10, it was a school project. We had to write a letter to our future selves about where we would be or what we would be doing or like what our lives looked like in the future. And my letter clearly stated that I was going to work with musicians and I was going to work with bands and I wanted to work for MTV. And 11 years later, before I even graduated from SVA, MTV hired me. And it was a dream come true. But then I had to write a new letter because I always had to keep reaching for something. When I was a kid, Doc Martens was one of my favorite brands. It was like the embodiment of cool. So many of my favorite rock musicians wore them. They were my teenage armor. The brand just meant strength. You know, you'd see those big black boots and that yellow stitching coming down the street and you're like, I'm not alone in this world. Photography was my entryway in, I guess, into creativity. I think in high school I started picking up film photography and I used to get lost in the darkroom for hours. I learned that before I learned filmmaking. I look at everything like it's one still composition. Being a photographer first gives you that eye. This Filmmaker series is about grit and authenticity and hard work and pure passion. We are filming with 6 up-and-coming artists and telling their stories. We're going to get to experience Los Angeles, talk about quarantine, all of the craziness in the world that's happening and where we are in a real way. My mom, single mom, raised us and I took on like a bunch of jobs from working in an animal hospital to babysitting and would spend all my money on music and also my first pair of docs. Being able to buy my own pair, to work hard for something, it just embraces this brand. It just embraces who I am. I'm from the East Coast. I lived in New York and Brooklyn for 15 years. Worked at many different networks in New York, MTV, NBC, HBO. I've worked on a lot of the biggest Netflix shows that you can think of, from 13 Reasons Why to Glow to The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. I do a lot of big commercials, but music and storytelling, if you put those two things together, it's the reason I exist. When I was 13, I lost my dad to cancer, and that significantly changed my life. And it drew me closer to harder music and lyrics that were real and raw. It's like pop music was talking about boys and butterflies, and I'm burying my father, so it didn't fit with how I felt. I just don't think anyone understood how I felt at that time. So it really pushed me closer to rock, because here were these artists that were talking about these real emotions for once. A lot of people say music saves them, and I understand that. I'm glassed over, glassed over, glassed over. I'm glassed over, glassed over. My happy place is the water. It is a spiritual experience to be on the water, sitting on your board, looking out into the great nothing. It's what I love about directing. It takes you out of your head, it brings you in the moment, you have to connect, you have to be present. Everything I have in this industry I've built myself from hard work and doing it myself. One thing that's really important is to always turn around and help someone else up. I have a few young female mentees from the Ghetto Film School who I mentor, and I also do a lot of work with Free the Work. They've been instrumental in changing the landscape for female directors and underrepresented talent. You know, when I was a kid just scribbling and doodling in my notebook, I never thought that I could be the one behind the camera directing. I never thought that I could reach that high. I didn't think the world had a place for me to be able to do that. I think as women, we are put in such a small box of what we have to be, and it is so limiting. Filmmaking truly makes me feel like myself. Working with these artists, you know, we're gonna dig into their past a little bit and experience the hopes they had for themselves as kids in their own notebooks and see where they've come along the way.